Hello everyone, my name is Zulkarnain and welcome to my channel. I'm getting a new playlist related with the Docker. So in this playlist, we are going to cover up Docker from beginner to the advanced level, and we will be covering each and every topic related with the Docker. Also, we will be doing some hands-on. In that, we will be making real-time projects. Okay. So in today's session, we are going to cover up the basic introduction of the Docker. So here I have mentioned some topics on which we are going to discuss. Okay. So here, like we have first one, what is Docker? Okay. So firstly, if I give the basic definition of the Docker, so as we all know, so Docker is a containerization platform. It provides an isolated environment in which you deploy your application, website, or web application in form of container. So this is the like basic definition of the Docker, which we all know. Okay, but what problem does Docker solve? Why do we need Docker? Why like people or why like people are using Docker? So before giving the answer of that question, firstly, we need to understand what problem Docker solved. Okay. So for example, as a developer, has my laptop, okay, I make a web application. Okay. So here's my entire the code on my laptop. I make a web application and before giving it to the deployment team or like tester team, I want to check my website whether it is working fine or not. Each and every function or functionalities are working properly or not. So as a developer, I know what are the prerequisite or dependencies or libraries it requires to run. So I install one by one. Firstly, I know that it requires the Node 22. So I install the Node 22 on my laptop. Then it requires the Nginx. So I install the Nginx also. Then it requires the Java 21 version. So one by one, I install each and every dependencies on my laptop. Okay. Then I start the application. Okay. And I check and and I manually I check each and every function and features are working properly or not. Once I ensure now it is ready to deploy over the server, so I hand over it to the deployment team. I hand over my code to the deployment team and deployment team or tester team. So yes, so before yes, deployment team deploy over the cloud, they need to yes test my application. So they firstly they need to yes run this application in their locally in their system. Okay. So when they start this application, they faces so many errors. For example, related with the dependencies. Okay, it gives like so many errors related with the libraries also or like prerequisite. Okay. So again, they circle back to the developer team and ask them, there is a issue inside your code when we are trying to run your application on our system, it is not working. It is giving so many errors. But developer says, no, it is working fine on my laptop. But again, developer checks and again, same file developer send to the deployment team or tester team. Test again test the same thing and they again face the same issues. So why they were facing this issue? Because because the developer like who yes installed each and every libraries or dependencies on their laptop which is not there and which has not been installed on the tester laptop. That's why they are facing these issues. So this is the basic and this is the like main issue which like developer and tester and the deployment team they used to face. How Docker solved it. So here's the like Docker comes into the picture. So Docker has a ability which is called container. So Docker says, okay, so you can make a container. Okay, you can make a container, and inside this container, you can install your application. You can install the dependencies, each and every which like you have installed on your laptop. You can install here also exactly same, and you can test your application on your laptop. Once you ensure now your application to handle the traffic and serve the content, you can simply spin up your container to the tester team or developer team. Developer team run same container on their laptop or like their server. Okay. So exactly they can check the and they can run some test cases. Okay. Then they can also exactly spin up same container over the server where like the container can handle the real-time traffic. So that's how Docker solve this issue. Okay, so let's come on to the document here. Okay, so here's like second one. Why is Docker important? So firstly, faster application deployment and isolated environment. How like it provides both things. Already I have told you Docker it is an isolated environment in which we deploy our application. So it is an isolated environment. Okay, and the same environment we can send over the tester team or over the server also. So how it is faster? Because it use shared host. It use shared host. Okay, we can say it use the shared kernel. Okay, and with the help of shared kernel, it yes runs the container, and inside the container, it runs your application. So that is why Docker container is very lightweight. Let's yes come on to the next one. Okay, so Docker versus virtual machine. As I have mentioned, uh, firstly we need to understand the what is the difference between a Docker and virtual machine. So as you can see, I have mentioned the architecture difference. If I compare the container and VMs, so here is our container and VM. We can yes, here is our server. Okay, so for example, here is like our VM server, virtual machine VM. Okay, here is our container. So firstly, I have told you like Docker use shared host and you don't need to give uh, the dedicated RAM and the dedicated CPU to your container. Docker container only uses that much resource which is required to run your application. Whereas on VM cases, yes, it requires because in that you will have to give the dedicated CPU and the dedicated storage also and the dedicated RAM. Okay. Also, you will have to attach the ISO. Then only you can run your VMs. That is why it becomes very heavy and large as comparison of Docker. So come on to the document. So as like already I have told you, like yes, for example, in use cases, in VM use cases, you give like 16 GB RAM to your VM. but your application is using only 4 GB RAM. Okay. So rest of the RAM is waste na, means rest of the RAM is not being used. So you somewhere you are wasting your resources in VM. Okay. So that's why people prefer to use Docker. Okay. So if I give the like Docker use cases here, here are like multiple use cases of the Docker where like we use, for example, development. Already I have told you uh, here developer, why like developer use the Docker. So here like I have mentioned, in development we use the Docker, and we write the Docker file. In that like we mention each and every dependencies and like code. Then we make a then we make an image with the help of that Docker file. Okay. So yes, on microservices we also use Docker. For example, you might have heard so many times the K8s, means K8s. It means like Kubernetes. Okay. Yes, Kubernetes also use the Docker. Means how Kubernetes use the Dockers? Kubernetes, for example, yes, in many yes, in yes, microservices. Yes, we also so here in microservices we also use the Docker. For example, you might have heard so many times Kubernetes. So Kubernetes also uses Docker uh, in form of pods. So inside this pod, yes, Kubernetes runs the Docker also. And for the cloud deployments, we also use the Docker. For example, yes. Uh, Run the containers there on cloud, and we host the application in form of container, as I have given you the example. So this is the like basic okay, so this is the like a basic introduction of the Docker, in which like I have like yes mentioned each and everything related with the Docker. And yes, in next video we are going to see the installation part of the Docker, how we can install the Docker on our server. And don't forget to like and subscribe also.